Hello, wizards, witches, and everyone in between. My name is Emma, and welcome to my June wrap-up. Alright, so I read 10 books in the month of June, which is weird because I also read 10 in May. I don't know why that's like my number now, but let's just jump right on in. The first book I read was Inside the OBriens by Genova, and I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. This was about a man who is diagnosed with Huntington's disease, which is a genetic neurodegenerative disease, and it follows his time coping with his diagnosis and like the disease's effects on his body and his work, and then the whole genetic component about how his kids have to decide whether they want to get tested or not. It was really good. I'm a big fan of Genova's work. I have liked everything I've read by her, so this was no surprise. Yeah, I just thought that it did a really good job showing what it's like to live with this disease, but in like a fictional way. And the characters all felt very real. They had real problems. They were complex. It was just heartbreaking and good. The next book I read was Linger by Maggie Stiefvater. This is the second book in the Wolves of Mercy Falls series. I finally know what the series is called. And I gave this 3 stars. I didn't love it as much as Shiver, but I still really enjoyed it. It's kind of like the vibe of the Shatter Me series, where it's just a fun, like it doesn't take itself too seriously, kind of light and fluffy werewolf series. So like 3 stars isn't a bad rating at all. It's just not much happened, but I still really enjoyed it. I love the characters in this so much. And I listened to this, and the same people who narrated Shiver narrate all 3 books. And so that was just a wonderful time because they do such an excellent job. Alright, the third book that I read was A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas, and I gave this 4 stars. I actually enjoyed it. It took a while for me to get into it. Yes, some things were very cringy. The romance I'm not a fan of in this, but just the fae kind of stuff and the world itself and the kind of magical creature thing. Plus the Alaskan bullworm from SpongeBob is in this. Like, it's just not called that, but we all know that that's what it is. I just really enjoyed it. I actually really liked Feyre, so I think that's why I rated this so high, was just because I just really like her. I mean, I'm rating it just not very critically, but just out of like how much I enjoyed it personally. And I definitely think it's a solid 4 stars for me, so I'm excited to read the next one. The next book I read was 5 Feet Apart by Rachael Lippincott, and I gave this 3 stars. It was about these 2 teens with, I think they both have cystic fibrosis, and it takes place in a hospital, and it's just kind of their adventures there, I guess. It's a contemporary romance. It was good. Again, I might be controversial in saying this, but it's very hard not to compare this to The Fault in Our Stars, and for me, The Fault in Our Stars was more enjoyable, but I just felt like this should have been like twice the length that it was. It was very quick and simple, which isn't a bad thing, I guess, but I was just expecting more character development and like complexity to the storyline. And it just kind of felt like it was like a novella, or like it was an outline that the writer wrote and then they published the outline instead of the full like story. I don't know. It was good. It was enjoyable. It was good, but I definitely was expecting more from it, I think. The next book I read was Archenemies by Marissa Meyer. This is the sequel to Renegades by Marissa Meyer, which you know I have dragged on this channel before. I did not enjoy that book at all, but I put myself into the anti-hero team for the Biblio Games readathon that took place in June, and this was their group book. I didn't think that through. So I had to read this, and you know what? I gave it a 4 stars. It was actually really good. I gave it a 4 instead of a 5 just because like my hatred for the first one kind of like crossed over into this, and there's still some plot lines that like I really don't care about. But if we're going on just basic like enjoyment and actual like plot and action, yes, like this book had everything that the first one didn't have, like action sequences that you can actually follow. But this one was actually really good, and dare I say, I actually like the main character Nova now, and I think I'm gonna read Supernova when it comes out. We'll see, but this was like very surprising. So if you read Renegades and it's not like your least favorite book, but you also did not enjoy it, maybe pick this up if you want to give it a second chance. I wanted to give Marissa Meyer a second chance personally because everything else that I've read from her I really liked. So I was like, I believe in you, we're gonna give it another go, and it was worth it. Alright, the next book that I read was Option B by Sheryl Sandberg. I had to read this for a positive psychology class I took in the summer, or I guess in basically for all of June, a little bit of May, and we had to write like a assignment based on this, and I gave it a 3, but I'm thinking it's a 2. It has some good, so Sheryl Sandberg, like her husband died really suddenly, and this book is about her journey with grief and coping mechanisms, coping strategies, learning how to live with your grief. Like that's a cool topic, and I do think it's important that we are more open about grief and how it's different for everybody and things like that. But she is very hard to relate to because she is really wealthy. They've both worked for Facebook. I can't remember what else they did, but she straight up was like, you know, thankfully when my husband passed away, like we weren't in need of the income that he used to bring in. We were fine. And I'm like, okay, that's a huge thing that I feel like most people cannot relate to that. She was just very lucky in her support group, her income, she's just very privileged, and I feel like that wasn't addressed enough in this, so that kind of bothered me. It was harder to relate to, but at the same time, like, it is her own personal experience, and I'm not here to be like, well, your ideas on grief are invalid because you're rich. Like, I'm not trying to do that either, so it's just a weird in-between, and it's not like I wanted to read this. I had to read it, so it's somewhere between a 2 and a 3. Sorry, my husband just came home. If the shot looks a little different now. But the next book I read was On the Come Up by Angie Thomas. I gave this 4 stars. I actually listened to this, and I really enjoyed the audiobook. It was so cool hearing the raps instead of just reading them. And I don't know, I just had a really good time with it. I'm out of breath now. It's moving speakers into my husband's car. I really enjoyed this. I guess I should say what this is about. This is about a girl named Bree who really wants to become a rapper, but she has a lot of things like going against her, and she has to overcome all this adversity, and it's really good. Alright, the next book I read was Forever by Maggie Stiefvater. This is the last book in the Wolves of Mercy Falls series, and I gave this a 3 as well. Really enjoyed this series. It was just so fun. I really wish that I'd read these in middle school, high school when they came out, but it's better late than never, and I want to read more werewolf stuff now. The next book I read, which took me probably the longest to read, was We Hunt the Flame by Hafsah Faizal. Hopefully that's how you say it. I should have looked it up. I'm so sorry. This was the Page Dwellers book club pick for June, and we haven't done the live show yet. It is going to be combined with our July's live show. So we'll talk about this at the end of July. But I gave this a 3. enjoyed parts of it, but the first 150 pages were painfully slow, and there's no glossary. There's one up on Goodreads, but it didn't make it into the book, and that's just so frustrating because there's so many terms that I don't know what they meant, and it was just so confusing and slow for the first half, and I really didn't like the main guy character, which was kind of annoying because this was dual perspective. So half the chapters I was just like, okay, can we get back to the main girl? But it did have some awesome like feminist times in it, and it did pick up enough by the end, but for some reason I just wasn't a fan. I felt like it was overly complex just for the sake of being complex. So it was very atmospheric. I liked the setting, I liked the main female character, and I liked the like feminist empowerment kind of vibes from it, but it kind of fell short for me, and I don't think I'll be continuing on when the second book comes out. This book is about a girl named Zafira who is a huntress, but women aren't supposed to hunt, and so she disguises herself as a hunter, and she's like famous in her land. She's like a very famous hunter, and no one knows that she isn't a man, and she gets chosen by the Sultan to go track down this item that will bring magic back to her land, because a bunch of complicated things happened in the past that they info dumped during a wedding, may I add. But yeah, so there's no magic in this land anymore, so she's gonna try and go find this thing and bring the magic back, and that's kind of the basic plot of it. It was okay. It was fine. The last book I read was Atonement by Ian McEwan, and I gave this 4 stars. This is a book that my parents both love, and I have been meaning to read it forever. It was good. It did not disappoint. It's about this girl named Bryony who sees her sister Cecilia hooking up with the son of like a cook in their household, and so obviously like he's lower class, and she just misinterprets the whole thing. She doesn't know like what's going on, and she thinks he's like hurting her sister, and she finds a note that he meant to give her sister, and Bryony finds it and uses that also as evidence that this guy is like a maniac, and he's dangerous, and he's a pervert, and she basically goes out and ruins his entire life. And this book takes place in 3 parts, so it jumps ahead many years between the parts, but that's kind of part 1, is she just ruins this guy's life. The rest of it is kind of like, how can she atone for what she did when she was a kid, and how she's living with the guilt of knowing that she lied about this, and all that kind of stuff. It takes place during World War II, parts of it, and it was really, really good. I recommend it. Alright, that was my kind of jumbled June wrap-up. I'm sweaty. Gotta love summer. If you guys have read any of these, let me know down below. I hope you guys are having a great day. Today's actually 4th of July when I'm filming this, so if you live in the US, happy belated 4th of July, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye!